This is one situation, no matter in whichever profession you are, you need to take care about this. Emergency fund not only saves you financially but also saves you from your mental stress. In this video, we'll be talking about how to put aside your emergency fund. We'll talk about real life personas, and we'll also talk about in which asset or where you have to put your emergency fund in order to take it at a later point of time. We'll talk about all this in this video. Before going any further, I want to let you know this video might be little long, but this one video is all you need to know about building your emergency fund. So let's get started. First of all, let's talk about the importance of emergency fund. As you all know, we have COVID times, right? During COVID times, a lot of people face job loss. So what happens when you lose a job, right? And your expense is still there. You want to buy groceries, you have to pay rent, you have your cars, you want to fill petrol to travel. So you have all these expenses, and if you lose a job in unforeseen situation, how do you manage this, right? So that's where this emergency fund comes. If you can save 6 months of expenses into a different account or into a different asset, so that you can use this at unforeseen situation. This is where emergency fund comes into play. The problem with building up emergency fund is lot of people have different professions, right? So each profession has different salary levels and each income levels as well. So depending on this income level, we need to find out their emergency fund, because a bachelor will be having a different emergency fund, a just married person will be having different one, a married person who has children who is going to school will have a different emergency fund. So different personas, different people will have different emergency fund. So let's have a look at different personas in the coming session. So let's take an example of a real life person who's called Chushant. He is age 22, so he started his career just now, and he's unmarried, and his total income is around 20,000. So looking at his lifestyle, he has a rent. He's living at PG right now, so he has a rent of 6,000. He has a food expense of 4,000 because he's a foodie, and he travels to and from office, and that petrol and all other expenses 2,000. And currently he doesn't have any EMIs. So putting all this together, his total expense will be 12,000 per month. So this is relatively low for a person who is starting out, but yes. And considering this 12,000 per month, his expense, when we multiply it by 6 for 6 months period, that comes around to 72,000. Here, one more thing we have to remember is his remaining balance is from his 20,000 salary is 8,000. So this is very much important. We'll be covering how we can utilize this fund and invest or put this fund or partially divide this fund in order to accumulate our emergency corpus or emergency fund in future. Okay, so we have another person who is Suraj, who is 28 years old and he is into IT profession. He is just married, and his total income, total household income is 40,000 post tax. All right. So he is living in a rented house, 2 BHK of 15,000. He is having a food expense because he and his wife will have food, and his travel expenses 5,000. He also has to travel to and from office, and he has a car, and currently he doesn't have any EMIs with him. So considering this, he has a total expense of 25,000. So for him, his total emergency fund will be 25,000 into 6, that will be close to around 1.5 lakh. All right, so for him, the remaining balance from his 40,000 salary will be around close to 15,000. So remember, this will be the fund for his need, because maybe he'll be thinking about buying some phone in future, or buying some furniture for himself or for his family, or something for his needs. So all this money will be coming out from this 15,000. And also we have to remember, that from this 15,000 is where he'll be starting to build his emergency fund. Coming to the third example, we have Mahesh, who is 35 years old, who is doing a business. He has a 3-year-old son and 5-year-old daughter, and his total income is 80,000. This is including his dividends and other incomes, all his business profit after tax. Like that is 80,000. So he is living in rented apartment, that is comes close to around 20,000. His food expense is 5,000 because his wife is not working. So they'll buy groceries and they'll cook food for their family, that is 5,000. Children expenses 5,000 because they'll be having some toys, foods, or their expenses, that is 5,000. Education expenses 25,000. Remember, our education inflation is around 20% year on year, so education is pretty high in these days. And he has a personal loan of EMI of 10,000. So for him, his total expense is coming around 65,000, which is very close to his total income. And for him, his leftover money after his total income is somewhere around 15,000. So we need to remember this 15,000 is a little bit tight for him, because out of this 15,000 he has to look for his needs. Maybe they are buying for new furniture, or maybe they are moving out for to some city, maybe for they are moving for some vacation. So all this he has to calculate with this 15,000, which is really tight. And also he has to start building his emergency fund, remember, in this 15,000. All right. Coming to the fourth example, we have Santosh, who is 45-year-old, who is in IT profession. He's married. He has 15-year-old son and 12-year-old daughter, and his total income is 1.5 lakh, which is good money at the age of 45. Normally, people at the age between 35 to 40, maybe when in their late 30s, they hit this 1.5 lakh in their IT profession. But 45-year-old having 1.5 lakh is not a bad income actually. All right. So when we talk about here expenses, he has a home loan of 30,000 because he is currently in his own house. So rent is converted now into home loan. He has a food expense of 10,000 because children are big now, old now, and they will have their own food expenses. All right. And again, children expenses, as they have their own vacation, they are going out, and education is 40,000, which is pretty low because he might be living in tier 2 or tier 3 city. If you are living in, let's say, if you are living in tier 1 city, like Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, uh, maybe Kolkata or Chennai, for example, so there the education is pretty high. So somewhere around this 40,000 will become around 65,000. Consider this to age for their children. All right, miscellaneous expenses, they have this maintenance, petrol, all other expenses they have accumulated into 50,000. All right, looking at this, they have a total expense of 1 lakh, and for them the emergency fund will be close to 6 lakh. So here again, the leftover, whatever is apart from income, 1.5 lakh minus 1 lakh will be somewhere around 50,000. This is a good amount, but you have to also consider their future values or future plans, because since their kids are getting old, Santosh has to think about their kids' future as well. He has to find money to invest in equities to grow money, maybe during their marriage or when they want to buy a new home or something like that. And again, he has to think of emergency fund, which is actually a little bit higher value, but we will come to its calculation in coming section. The next question I get often is, how do I save for my emergency fund, right? If I am saving around 10,000 rupees, what is my emergency fund that we have seen in our personas? But how do I put aside my emergency fund, right? The solution comes down to saving more. All right. So there is your wants and there is your needs. All right. So needs is something you obviously want it. So something like grocery, food, travel. So all that you needed, but your wants is that brand new iPhone, brand new MacBook, or that 55-inch LED. Currently, Amazon sale is going on, so all of you wanted that big sale offers, right? So instead of thinking of buying that 55-inch LED which costs around 40,000, you can try imagining putting that 40,000 into your emergency fund. Instead of going to that luxurious vacation, you can think of putting that particular fund into your emergency fund. Or instead of buying that brand new phone, which you can delay it by 2 or 3 years, you can put that fund into emergency fund. The entire emergency fund principle comes down to one single principle, is that your mentality towards saving. But where do you put your money, right? That's where we'll explore in the next session. Alright, so where do you put your emergency fund, right? So start saving. Suppose you are saving 5,000 rupees. Let's see where all you can put your emergency fund. Alright, the purpose of emergency fund is you put this fund aside and never touch that fund. You only touch the fund during emergency situations only. So keeping this mentality in mind, let's explore different options. First and first, it's always better to make a separate savings account. So if you can make a sub account for your main account, or you can open a separate savings account in another bank. Once you open a savings account, you can put a half amount of your savings into that amount. You can think about, if you are saving 5,000 rupees, you can think about, why am I putting this whole 5,000 rupees into a different account? Can't I invest this 5,000 rupees? The problem with investment is it's risky. It has its ups and downs. Your money will not be the same once you put into an investment assets. So it's always better to put that money in a savings account. So the point here is, instead of investing, put that money into your emergency fund, so that let it build up to your 6 months expenses. And if you are saving 5,000 rupees and your 6 months expenses is somewhere around 80,000, let that savings account build into 80,000 of corpus, and then you start investing. It might take around 1 year or 1.5 years, 2 years, 3 years, but the agenda here is to have an emergency fund first and then go into investments. Alright, so the second option is recurring deposit. All banks have recurring deposits, right? Once you have a recurring deposit set from your bank on 4th or 5th of every month, once your salary comes, then it goes automatically. You don't have to do anything. That is where it blindly goes, right? That's where it's helpful. And after a period of 1 or 2 years, it builds up its whole amount and comes up to your emergency fund of 6 months expenses. The next option is FD. The point here is, FD is to keep your money safe, right? But the problem is, FD is, if you are breaking FD in times of emergency, which we never know, you might have to give a penalty depending on when you break your FDs, right? If you are a person who says, I don't want FD, I don't want RD, I don't want to put into any savings account, but I want to grow my money also, then for you, gold might be the next option. In gold, there are 3 different classes. We can buy physical gold, that is jewelry or gold coins. We can buy ETFs, that is gold ETF, which is same into equity investments. We can also buy SGB, that is sovereign gold bonds as well. Alright, which is suitable for you? Let's see. Suppose you are a bachelor, you can go for higher risk, that is gold ETFs or SGBs. But if you are a parent who is having a children, or you want to save some jewelry for your children as well, consider an emergency fund, then you can buy some jewelries or some gold coins as well. That's just a mentality, that's just a opinion from my side. Yours can be different as well. Okay, so the next option is ETFs. We have Nifty ETFs and we have blue chip companies as well. So if you are a person who wants to take a little bit of risk and you want to build an emergency fund over a period of 3 to 5 years, then Nifty ETFs or blue chip companies can be a good option. But comparing Nifty ETF and blue chip company, Nifty ETF will be a safer option. But keep in mind, your fund can go up and down anytime possible. So if you are a person who already has a half saved emergency fund, then you can think of putting this other half into ETFs. And keep in mind, it will take 2 days to get your ETFs or money which you are putting in your ETF to get into your bank account. And the next option and the final option, and one of the most riskiest option compared to the emergency fund, how you accumulate, is mutual fund as well. So mutual fund also has ETFs as well. So in mutual fund, it's better to go for Nifty 50 mutual fund. So that's a better option and safer option for you all. Again, if you are a person who doesn't want to invest in any of this equity fund, you have liquid mutual fund as well. So it has a return of somewhere around 5 to 7%. It's more than FD and it's less than our inflation. So if you invest in liquid mutual fund, your money will be safe, but again, remind, it will take around 1 day to get your money into your bank account. Again, it all depends on how your mentality is, at what age you are, and how much risk you are able to take for your emergency fund. All right, but the underlying idea is you should not take any risk regarding your emergency fund, because you don't want your emergency fund to be depleted at any point of time. If it's same, well and good. If it's appreciated, well and good. But the point here is, it should not get deteriorated. Alright, so let's take all examples which we have seen, all the personas. So coming back to our personas, let's calculate how each person can put monies into different accounts so that to build their emergency fund. Alright, coming to Sushant, he has a balance of 8,000. Okay, so from here, let's say he will be using 4,000 rupees since he's a bachelor for his own personal needs, and he will be having a balance for emergency fund somewhere around 4,000. Alright. From this emergency fund, if he starts putting this emergency fund into another savings account, that will somewhere come around 48,000 in 1 year. Alright. But for him, ideally, he doesn't need to start investing at this early point of time, so he can start putting his money again into um, savings bank account, and once again, if he puts here, it will be somewhere around 96,000 in second year. All right, so for Sushant, he can simply put his money into a savings bank in order to have his emergency fund. So he doesn't ideally need to focus more into equity investments. But if he starts to put somewhere around his 4,000 rupees, which he parties out, drinks, and maybe go out with friends, vacation, travels, which he can put some amount of this 4,000 into equity investments and consistently invest in some blue chip companies or ETFs or gold Bs or STBs, then he can, have a very big amount on his retirement. So let's look at a next example. We have Suraj. He is saving around 15,000, but we need to keep in mind he has just married, so the risk he can take is very minimal now. So for him also, it's always best to put this entire 15,000 whatever he is saving into savings bank account. So savings bank, he can put 15,000, which comes around to somewhere around 1.8 lakh, 1 lakh 80,000. So in Suraj's situation, if he puts consistently this 15,000, and if he thinks of living his first 1 year, little bit in a budget friendly way, he can have an emergency fund in just 1 year period. But do remember, when you have a child, all this changes up. And for Suraj, after a period of 1 year, he can start putting his money into equity, gold, ETFs, and so on. So that is one advantage if you are just getting married and you have savings as well at the same time. Coming to next example, Mahesh. This is a little bit tricky case because he is saving around only 15,000, but he has 3-year-old son and 5-year-old daughter, so that's is a little bit hazard for him because he has to save a bigger amount of coppers because he has to look after his children as well on the way. So let's take a look here. So if he's saving around 15,000, let's say for 12 years, so that will be somewhere around 1,80,000. On the same time, if he starts to put somewhere around in the next year somewhere around 10,000 in equity fund, so that will somewhere around 1.2 lakhs into maybe some ETFs or liquid mutual fund. All right, so that will be saving for him. And then on the third year, if he thinks about, okay, let's put here. Okay, on the third year, so he has already 1.8 lakhs, and then 2 lakhs, it's 3 lakhs. And on the third year, if he starts to put somewhere around 10,000, you know, and maybe around 6 months, if he puts, that comes around to 60,000. All right. If he starts to think of putting this amount again into ETFs and liquid mutual fund, all right. So by the time it is 2.5 years, he will be having emergency fund with him. But the point here is he will be needing 2.5 years to build up his emergency fund by the time his children will be 2.5 years older as well. But the point here is he needs to be consistent enough because he has to reduce his overall expense in this 2 years. He has to sacrifice a lot. He might have to sacrifice around going for vacation, going out, going with his children, maybe buying expensive things, expensive clothings, or maybe that 40-inch TV. But everything, all in all, he might have to start sacrificing a lot to bring up his emergency fund. All right. So the fourth example, Santosh, who is married and he has a balance of 50,000 and he needs to save an amount of 6 lakh for his emergency fund as of now. Let's take an example here. So suppose he is saving 50,000 in a span of 12 months. Uh, so that will somewhere come around 6 lakhs. So if you see here, this particular 1 year saving is all it's required for him to build up his emergency fund. But will it be easy? Possibly not, because he has very older children here as well comparatively. So children might be having different things which they need, and also they have this education expenses as well, which always goes up, and food and home loan as well. So will it be easy? No, but if he thinks it can be possible, it's always better. And it's always best to put your money in this situation. If you are trying to save your money in the first 1 year period, it's always best to put it in your savings account. Or you can start your RD as well, so that it will take from your bank like that. If you are putting your money in savings account, it should be putting your money there, and you should never be looking at that ever again, because you should be only looking at that when you are having an emergency. You should not be using that. Remember to buy that 50-inch LED TV. The next thing people ask is why you want to grow your emergency fund, right? Once you have a 6 lakh or 5 lakh, a bigger amount, and put it in some FT, so that's all enough, right? But the point here is you need to know how inflation eats up our money, right? Currently, inflation in India is around 7%, and our medical inflation is around 14%, and consumer products inflation is 23% around. All right, depending on all this, and again, education inflation is around 20%. As you can see, your son's daughter's education fees is not the same as it was 10 years ago, right? So all this adding up, you need to grow your emergency fund little by little. All right. How much you grow, that all depends on you. And a point here is the higher the return, the higher the risk as well with your fund. The next question people ask is, I have equity investments, I have purchased many shares, I have 10 lakhs worth of shares. Isn't that my emergency fund? Alright, the goal of equity investment, the goal of buying companies, that to blue chip companies or any company you want which you have as equity investment, is for a long term purpose. You're buying a company or you're buying shares of a company now looking at 10 years or 15 years period, right? So that is your long term purpose. But your emergency fund can come maybe tomorrow as well, right? We can all lose our job maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow a recession can happen, right? So the emergency fund should be an asset which you can take as quickly as possible without deteriorating your fund. Okay, the next thing is, when should I plan for my emergency fund? What is the right time to plan my emergency fund? The short and simple answer is, as and when you get your first income, that is the day when you should plan your emergency fund. We never know, right? When COVID hit in late 2090s, no one saw it coming, right? And now Kerala is facing with floods in another recession. No one saw that coming, right? So all this people will never see it coming, and once it hits, then it will be very difficult without an emergency fund. That is when this comes as handy. Okay, the next point is, it's always best to have a credit card with you, because once you have your emergency corpus, then you can give your credit card away. But when you are starting to build your emergency fund, then it's better to have a credit card. This credit card is actually a cash in your hand, although you need to pay back the money to your bank. But we never know when situation hits, right? But keep in mind, you have to be laser focused that you need to be using this credit card only and only in times of emergency, or else, when that Amazon sale comes, when that Flipkart sale comes, all the while you'll be using that credit card to buy that big 44-inch LED TV, right? Okay, alright, if you found this video useful, share it with your friends who wants to know more about emergency fund. I hope 50% of the people who are watching this video will not have their emergency fund. According to report, 90% of our employed people who work in corporate doesn't even have an emergency fund. They can't even sustain if they lose their job in 1 month's time. So this is very, very critical, and this is very critical to share with your friends who wants to build their emergency fund. And this building up emergency fund should be by default for everyone. That's where the company is called Job Assurance came just now. It's like a company where, I'm not promoting that company, but it's a company where they give insurance or they give payment to you for 3 months if you lose your job. Alright. But again, if you lose your job, it's always best to have emergency fund with you. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, give a thumbs up, and then always do share it with your friends so that they can start thinking and building their emergency fund. I'll see you in the next video.